welcome to another campaign episode of TV on TV right here on Brookline Interactive Group. I'm Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Big, and we've got another great show for you today. Now, because we're in campaign season, we do the show a little bit differently. We do not have a news program. We skip right past that. We want as much time as possible with the candidates. The election is Tuesday, May 6th. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There is early voting. Use your search engine, poke around. You'll find the Brookline Town Clerk's website. Polls are open early in person in particular locations and times. Get the details there so you get them exactly right. There is also voting by mail. Again, go check out the Town Clerk's website for those sorts of details. What I want to talk with you about is that there are 3 different competitive townwide races: select board, school committee, and library trustee. Now, we've done all of the select board members already. You've seen them right here on Brookline Interactive Group. As you know, for library trustees, we don't have enough TV slots. And so we filmed all of those and we're putting them just on the internet where you can watch them on brooklineinteractive.org. But school committee, it's a big job. It's a competitive race. There are 6 candidates for the 3 positions. So you can vote for up to 3 on Tuesday, May 6th. Today we've got incumbent Helen Charlupski. Helen, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Tommy, for having me. I really appreciate you doing this and all the work that you do.
Well, listen, I love having candidates on the show. It gives viewers a chance to really get to know folks in a little bit of a longer format. So, Helen, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask every guest. What have you been doing your whole life?
Well, that's a really good question. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to talk a little bit about myself. My name is Helen Charlupski. I've been on the school committee since 1992, but my background, I'm a public school, high school graduate and a graduate of a public university, the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Sorry about that one, but I had to put that in. And I got my master's degree at the University of Michigan also in social work. I've worked in a number of different areas of social work. I've worked in research on juvenile corrections. I've worked in medical social work, both at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, where I not only did social work, but had to do it either in Hebrew or in Yiddish, which was interesting at the time. I speak both of those, along with Spanish. And then my Spanish came in handy because at Children's Hospital, I was hired as a Spanish-speaking psychiatric social worker. So my involvement with the schools began with being the PTO chair at the high school, and finding out all the wonderful things that happen at Brookline High School. From there, I went on to run for school committee because it just seemed like the logical place to move on to. I was the chair of the school committee from 2000 to 2002 during the time that Jim Walsh was there. And I basically served continuously since then. On a more personal note, I was married to Dr. Joseph Biederman for 42 years until he passed away 2 years ago. And we have 3 children who went K through 12 at Runkle and BHS and the University of Michigan. So all public school graduates.
And so, I ask all the candidates the question. For you, I'm going to ask it a little bit differently. You've been serving on the school committee for Brookline for 33 years. Haven't you had enough?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't blame you for wondering why I would still want to do this. But it's really simple. I care deeply about the public schools of Brookline, our students and our amazing educators. If times were calm, I would feel really comfortable handing off the baton. I don't necessarily feel the need that I need to go on for 3 more years. But, and this is a big but, times are anything but calm. Our schools urgently need stability and institutional history to build back to its strength. I'm committed to providing that on the school committee and to returning our schools to the sustainable excellence we all expect and deserve. And what I mean by that is we need financial stability, and I'll talk about that later. We need to keep our focus on educational excellence, and we need trust and collaboration between the town and the schools. I was on the school committee when the town-school partnership began in 1995. It was more than a financial arrangement at that time. It cemented a commitment that recognized the importance of strong schools to the town and vice versa. That translated into strong relationships. When I was chair, for example, I would meet monthly with the chair of the select board. We need to rebuild the strength of those relationships to build a sustainable future for the public schools. So that's in a nutshell. I think also one other piece, my long service on the school committee gives me a sense of perspective, but also of hope. When I first came on the school committee, we had a $4 million deficit and a $52 million budget. I'll talk more about the deficit, not the deficit, the gap. I have to be careful. The gap is in the budget that we're forecasting. The deficit is something that actually we have closed for this year. So I'm very pleased about that. And we won't be asking the town for a reserve fund transfer. But that being said, I think my long service on the school committee gives me a sense of perspective that we can meet the challenges of now. I hope I can continue to voice that, to be that voice of experience, and hope in this fraught and frustrating moment, our children and teachers need strong and stable schools in order to be the people we want them to be.
So I want to talk a little bit about the gap. You know, voters sort of woke up to a Brookline News article or some other news that there's an $8 million budget gap. And that's not a deficit. You mentioned that. It's really important. A gap is for a budget we haven't finalized going forward. A deficit is, hey, we've already made a commitment to spend money that we're not going to have. What do we do? Right? A gap is about good planning. A deficit is about maybe the planning was good, maybe it wasn't, but we're not in the place we thought we would be. So $8 million budget gap, very startling. Parents got very upset very quickly, and rightfully so. They care about their kids. They care about their education. Other people in town were upset as well. Can you kind of give us some sense around, where did it come from? What does it mean? And I'll remind viewers, this interview is pre-recorded. And so, Helen can't give us an up to the minute account of where we're at, but at least in the beginning part of working through the $8 million, what was on the table, what was taken off the table, how did you work through it?
With great difficulty to begin with. It's never easy to find budget reductions because, as people may or may not know, our budget is comprised of 85% salaries, teachers' salaries, administrative salaries, 85%. But the rest is supplies and grants, contracts, things like that. So our current budget, just to keep people up to date, as of March 25th, our current budget gap is $3.6 million. We have cut back mostly in different areas that aren't student facing, but now it's getting hard. It's getting really hard. How do we get here? I think is the better question. If people remember, we had an override 2 years ago. Well, this is the third year of the override this coming year. And at that time, it was the committee that recommended it, recommended one number, and the town decided to go for a lower number for the override. Now it's number one. Last year, our town forecasted a budget for the schools of $143 million. Our budget, what they have allotted us for this year, is $141 million. That's a $2 million difference, a big difference. Would go a long way towards closing the 3.6 million. In addition, inflation, as you know, we can only raise taxes by 2.5% unless there's an override, and inflation is higher than 2.5%. So we have a structural problem with the way we fund the schools in general, along with every other community across the state. Almost everyone has a budget gap. Newton, I've heard, just recently had a $14 million budget gap. They're a bigger system and with a larger budget. So in addition to that, our healthcare costs, as most of you probably have experienced with your own healthcare costs, have gone up 11.5%. That's a huge increase. When we've been, most of the time we've had 4%, 4 to 5% increases. The town has been generous with the schools, but it doesn't make up the difference. And so we usually have to go back to the voters every 3 to 4 years for an override. Some towns do it every year. I think we've been very fortunate that the town realizes, the citizens, everybody out there who's listening, hopefully, realizes that the schools are really important for Brookline. We pride ourselves on having an excellent educational system. In addition, when we're talking about cost drivers, our special education expenses have risen 35% this year. So, all those things together, and state funding is not only flat, but it's lower. Right now, we are counting in our present budget $77 per student. However, last year we got $104 per student. So that's another cut that is really difficult. We're hoping that Representative Vitolo will be able to do some magic at the State House and get that back up to 104 or even a little more, because at 7,000 students, it becomes real money that can help us to close this gap. The state funding is flat, like I said. Federal funding, we don't know what's going to happen. The bad news is that we get very little funding from the feds. The good news is that we get very little funding from the feds, so we're not going to lose a lot from them. We're hopeful that we'll continue to get our Title I grants and our other federal grants. So, closing the gap is always painful, no matter what. There's always a constituency that is being affected, and I'm hopeful that we can accomplish most of the closing through attrition and retirements. I'm also hopeful that the legislature will increase the minimum aid. We have to continue to work with our town partners to see what we can do. There are still a few areas that we're looking at, and I'm hopeful that those will bring down the 3.6 million. It's a work in progress that will take probably the next month till we know where we're at.
Now, what were a few of the things that were floated as possible cuts that you and others on the school committee have said, we're not cutting there?
Yeah. So some of the things that have been floated were programs at the middle school, music conservatory, and after school athletics. And those we voted not to cut. There was a special ed class that we needed to add a special ed teacher to, that I actually went and looked at the class, and so did obviously our special ed director, interim director, who determined that no, that was a needed special ed increase. I think one of the things I voted against was increasing the cost of, and one of the ways to adjust your revenues is by, Tommy, are you still there? Hold on. Oh, God. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Now you can hear me. Here we
Now
go. All right, we had a Zoom blip. We'll see if we can fix it. But even if we can't, Helen, you were talking about early education, about BEEP being a way to narrow the budget gap that you rejected.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel that, the parents of kids of preschoolers are just starting out in work, just starting out in life, and they can't afford that kind of increase of $8,000 a year. And it's important to have a good cross-section of Brookline who attend our BEAT programs. And so, I felt that it was too large an increase. I could have possibly gone for, just a 1% increase, but this was really, I felt, too much. I was in the minority, and that happens at times. There are things that sometimes when you're on the school committee, you don't always get what you would like. But I think there are other revenues, the use of our buildings, that we do take in some money for that. There's places where we try and have revenues, but overall, our budget mostly comes from the town.
I want to ask you about Pierce. Now, some of the viewers know that I have two children at Pierce School. I have an 8th grader and a 4th grader. And of course, we authorized a debt exclusion to rebuild Pierce School at its site. That involves dismantling, demolishing it, and then rebuilding it. Helen, you had an outsized role in Pierce, and I think you still do. Can you walk us through your relationship with the Pierce project, and then maybe, because you are so involved in it, give us an update a little bit about where we are right now?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So I'm the co-chair of the Pierce School Building Committee, together with Bernard Green and Janet Fairman, actually, from the Building Commission. I've been really happy with what has happened with the Pierce School and our construction, the costs in general, the Pierce School was a building that needed to come down, and we were fortunate enough to get the votes from the town. And the project itself is presently under budget and on time, which is really important for people to know. We're $3 million under budget. And that's with having a great deal of contingency, because this site was probably the most complicated site to build on in Brookline, even more complicated than the Ridley School. It is nestled in a small corner of Brookline Village. It has buildings on all sides. It has access issues. It had a town garage underneath, along with the school garage. All those things added to what was a substantial cost at the time for the school building. But what I'm really happy to say is that, even though it is all those things, we've been able to bring it in, the project construction costs, $3 million under budget. That's really unusual in this time. And we're keeping track of all the tariffs and stuff like that, to make sure that we don't get hit with that. The contractor, Consigli, the architects, and the owner's project manager have worked incredibly well together to make this project so far very successful. I've also, as you asked, been involved with building projects. Actually, I guess that's one of the things I'm known for on the school committee since the Heath School in 1994, when we did a small renovation there. And continuously after that, the Baker School, the high school twice, and the Ridley School, all of which projects actually came in under budget and have been a really boon to the town in terms of having spaces that reflect the educational excellence. Many of these buildings were very tired and needed these renovations. Buildings in general need to be renovated every 50 years. Your own house, you have to do work. If you don't keep it up and you don't renovate, it becomes very costly to then do things later on.
So, you said it's on time. It's actually a little under budget. What you didn't mention was that the town didn't pay for the whole school.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Actually, we have partnered with the Mass School Building Authority, which is the state organization that funds school buildings. since the beginning of its inception. Back when we did the Runkle School, I think we were the first school to get funded, along with a renovation at what was then Heath School. Both of those buildings got funded at about 22 to 25%. I can't remember the exact amount. With the we also got funding for the Ridley School, around that same 22 to 25%. And we do know that for this one, I have the figure for the Pierce School, it's a $49 million contribution from the state. And so that's huge in terms of what the ability to relieve some of the taxpayer borrowing, the town's borrowing from, or the taxpayers. The other thing people should know on those savings, it's not like we borrowed the money already. We basically won't borrow the money, so the town has less debt to pay off. And these are 20-year bonds, municipal bonds that we put out, that we've gotten incredibly good interest rates. I think at the Driscoll School, it was something like 2% or less, maybe 1.75%, which is amazing to be able to borrow at that percentage. It's gone up since. But
Yeah, that's part of that's our AAA bond rating in the town for sure. Thank you for that update. I know that you have long been focused on early ed. You mentioned it in a vote you took a little earlier in the show. Tell us about your history with early ed and kind of the things you've been working on over your time on the school committee, and bring us all the way up to date.
I'd be happy to do that. It's early ed has been one of my passions actually on the school committee. I've been involved both on the local level with the BEEP and other early childhood programs, but also on the state level. I was involved when the Department of Education put together an advisory council. I was the Mass Association of School Committees representative to that advisory council, and then became the chair of it. At that time, we only had half-days kindergarten, and other communities would have paid, you could pay for the second half of the day. That continues to this day. Brookline in 1999, when the state came out with its first grants to go to full-day kindergarten, Brookline hopped on it right away because we were aware that that was happening. And we were paying our teachers already 85% salary. So the 15% we could get to much easier. It wasn't easy, but it was important. Those early years, as everybody knows, all research shows you invest in early childhood education, you get return on your investment. Kids who come in with less than 3,000 words into preschool are at a deficit, and we can make that up by giving them high quality early childhood education. BEEP has been, is known throughout the world. Actually, it's known here, but it's in Massachusetts. But we really have a reputation of the type of work that we do. Brookline was one of the first school districts that started with early childhood education, a grant with the Children's Hospital. And I'm probably going into way too much detail, but I think it's important to know we were the first in a lot of areas that are important to education, whether it's BEEP, the founding of METCO, whether it's our BRIGHT program, that was a joint program with the Brookline Mental Health Center that I was involved with from the beginning, which just celebrated 20 years and is being replicated across the state and actually across the United States. That's a program for kids who are pre and post hospitalization. We do amazing things in our programs. The ACE program is one of those programs at the high school. They're really part of what makes Brookline really special.
And just this year, BEEP expanded its program. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I should have started with that. We've gone to full school day BEEP. Up until last year, it was the 8 till 12, more or less, 4-hour preschool day, and with the, the department, the beat principal, Margaret Eberhardt, she came to us with a proposal to go to full day, and the school committee voted it because it was really important to be able to, those kids were already in full day programs before they got to beat, many of them. And so you want to give the most that you can for that. So that I'm really proud that we're able to do that.
And so we've just got a few minutes left. I want to at least sort of acknowledge, look, there's a campaign. There are 6 candidates for 3 positions. You've got a website, which currently is very long. Maybe we'll get a shorter version. I've got it here. It's sites.google.com/view/Helen for Brookline. If we get a shorter version by the time this airs, we'll put it right here, put it on the screen. How's the campaign trail feeling?
Well, I think it's feeling good. It's always hard. There's no polls in Brookline, so we don't get the advantage of that. It's the last person that you spoke to mostly, but I think it's interesting that there's so much interest in the school committee. I've found over the years when there's a vacancy, many more people put their hat in than when there's not, when all the incumbents are running. You'll see if you look back over time, that's certainly true for school committee. I think for the select board also. I think, I think Brookline in many respects is right now reflecting the national issues. There's a lot of anger with what goes on, outside of Brookline. And a lot of that anger, it's right here in Brookline too. People are angry. And so we're good when you have to cut. That's people can be angry about cuts, and I understand that. Believe me, if we didn't have to do these cuts, I'd be the happiest person around. I think that I'm hoping people will listen to the issues, will understand the importance of stability and his institutional history, because if not, we can very easily make the same mistakes that have been made in the past. So I'm hoping that I can get the votes, people out there, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk.
Well, Helen, I want to thank you for coming on the show, folks. Helen Charlupski, incumbent running for re-election to the school committee. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, May 6th. Competitive races for select board, school committee, and library trustee, and most town meeting race is within the precincts. I want to thank you for watching the show, TV on TV, right here on Brookline Interactive, where we try to engage with frankly important members of the public each and every week. Folks, thanks for watching, and we will see you again next week. Until
Thank
then,
you.
be wonderful.
Thank you.